Good morning and welcome to Worldwide Wisdom. We're learning the Kuzari, which is Foundations of Jewish Philosophy. This is the one of the great texts of Jewish philosophy, which we're learning. It's in this book, the Kuzari. We're working our way through it, and we're going to be exploring some of the sensational foundations of Jewish faith. I want to just share with you something so important as we get ready to go into this, to dive into it. And that is that, we spoke recently about on Shabbos, we spoke about the philosophy of Egypt, of the Egyptian culture, which is so incredibly deep. It's what'd you call it? The dangers of ocularity?
That's something else. That's the tyranny of ocularity.
The tyranny of ocularity is what the Egyptian culture is all about. I call it myopia. I call it short-sightedness. But the Greek culture was so toxic. It was so seductive. It was so dangerous that to this very day, you have humanistic Judaism. What is humanistic Judaism? Well, what is it? What does it even mean? What does humanistic Judaism mean? Humanistic Judaism, you're calling it Tikkun Olam. What it really is, it means placing the human being as a paradigm who does not need God.
Yes.
Humanistic Judaism says there's a God, yeah. Maybe there's a God, maybe there isn't God, but human beings don't need God because we have science, because we have technology, and primarily because we have rational reason.
Is that reform too? Is that reform?
I don't know if it's actually reform, but it's connected. In other words, when you look at the roots, when you look at the foundations of reform, where does it come from? So humanistic Judaism was born out of the Enlightenment movement. The Enlightenment movement was one form of enlightenment in the 17th and 18th centuries was reform. 18th and 19th, thank you. Was reform, was one manifestation of that. But where does it come from? It comes from the Renaissance. The Renaissance, one of the principles of the Renaissance was the rise of human freedoms through research, through technology, right? Remember there was the Industrial Revolution, right? And through the ability through emancipation from the power of the church. They didn't want to be controlled by the popes. And the roots of the Renaissance began in pre-Christian times in the Greek and Roman cultures. So I just want you to realize that there's a flow, there's a cord that flows beneath all the way through back to the Greek philosophy of Hanukkah, which I keep on talking about because it's such a big deal. And here in the Kuzari, when we read about the four people that are debating for the superiority of their faith groups, you got the Christian, you got the Weltanschauung. You got the Christian, you got the Muslim scholar, you got the philosopher, and you got the rabbi. Where does the philosopher come from? He's rooted in Greek Hellenistic philosophy. But let's get into the concept. I'm on page 5. We're going to work our way through here. The context, we're still working through our way through the introduction. Move a little quicker today. At the bottom of page 5. So what is about the title Kuzari, this book of Rabbi Yehuda Halevi's philosophy? Why is it? And he was one of the greatest writers in Jewish history. If Isaiah was the greatest orator, and Moses was the great transcriber, then Rabbi Yehuda Halevi was the great writer. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, I'd like to welcome Stephen Lane, son of Matt Lane and Susan Lane.
I'm sorry for your.
So, where does the title Kuzari come from? Why does Rabbi Yehuda Halevi call his book Kuzari? Well, he's writing Jewish philosophy. What's it called Kuzari? What does the word mean in the 10th century? Chasdai ibn Shaprut was a high-ranking Spanish Jew and a statesman. He corresponded in the 10th century with the king of the Khazars. Ibn Shaprut had heard through the diplomatic grapevine that in Khazaria, between the Caspian and Black Seas, an empire situated between the Black and Caspian Sea, lived an entire nation of Jews who were mighty warriors and who instilled fear into the hearts of all the neighbors. Can you imagine? In this area of Eastern Europe, you had these fierce Jewish warriors Who were these people? This news was very exciting, especially in the light of the weakened state of the Jews and the rest of the diaspora. The Ibn Shaprut needed to understand, who were these Jews? These like Rambo Jews, these Arnold Schwarzenegger style Jews. Who were they? Could they be one of the 10 lost tribes of Israel? Ibn Shaprut had to find out. And after much effort, he was able to transmit a letter to King Joseph of the Khazars. We don't know how long it took to receive a reply, but we do have a record of King Joseph's response. Both the letter and the response are translated in the appendix of this book. In it, the king recorded a fascinating account of how Kuzari came to be a Jewish state. Sometime in the 8th century, King Bulan of the Khazars had a dream in which he was visited by an angel who blessed him and exhorted him to serve his creator. He was later visited by the great wise men of his time, a Christian, a Muslim, and a Jew. Note the absence of the fourth. Who was the fourth? The philosopher was not mentioned in the letter. The king had these great scholars debate until he was satisfied that only Judaism was the true faith. So this is the context of the story, the true story of the kingdom of the Khazars becoming Jews. In the 8th century, when King Bulan had this dream, the angel tells him in his dream, your actions are, what did he tell him in the dream? He said, where do we see that? We just mentioned the dream, didn't we? Well, the angel blessed him and exhorted him to serve his creator. We'll learn later that the angel said to him, your intentions are good, but your actions are not. So he tried to figure out, what is the proper actions? What am I supposed to do? What is the right way of living life? And that's why this 8th century king of the Khazars brought in the Jew, a rabbi, he brought in a rabbi, an imam, and a Christian priest, right? Remember, Christianity is 2,000 years old. And Islam is only 1,500 years old, 573 CE. They're the new kid on the block, right? The Jewish people go back 4,000 years to Abraham. Christians are 2,000 years. Muslims are 1,500 years. But in the 8th century, all three were already around, and they were having this great debate in front of King of Khazars, who ultimately decided to go with the Jews, and he converted his whole kingdom to Judaism. Now, this account of the time of Ibn Shaprut in the 10th century appears to be the foundation for Rabbi Yehuda Levi's story of the Khazar king, or the Kuzari. That's the name of this book. It had probably become something of a folk tale by the time it reached him in the 12th century. As we note later in this introduction, there was probably no actual transcript of the dialogue between the rabbi and the Khazar king. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, the author of this book, in the 12th century, most likely used the story as a vehicle to present his own philosophy of Judaism. It's kind of creative. He wanted to write a book of philosophy on Judaism. So what did he do? He formatted it on the context of this great debate, which was by then a legend, of the conversion of this kingdom of people as they debated the merits of each of the three religions. It's interesting to note some of the differences between the original story as it appears in the letter of Ibn Shaprut and Rabbi Yehuda Levi's account in the Kuzari. The most conspicuous change is the addition of the fourth wise man, the Greek philosopher, in the roster of wise men who visited the king and attempted to prove that their own belief system was superior to the others. It should be obvious by now why Rabbi Yehuda Levi chose to add this character to the cast. Since the great threat to the Jewish community was the allure of Greek philosophy, Rabbi Alevi wished to draw the fallacious arguments through the philosopher's own lips. So you may want to call it a historical novel, which is based on a true story, but it was, modified. Also noteworthy is the change in the angel's charge to the king. In the Ibn Shaprut account, the angel came to the king Bulan as a reward for his righteousness and his abolition of idolatry. It was the angel who seems to tell Bulan to choose Judaism and to follow his commandments. In Rabbi Yehuda Levi's account, however, the angel was vaguer and more mysterious. He visits the Kuzari, who is still a pagan idolater in this version, and he simply tells him, your intentions are desirable to your creator, but not your deeds. The king is plagued by the fact that despite his honorable and holy intentions, the angel comes back repeatedly to tell him that he is not fulfilling God's will. This prompts the king to conclude that there must exist a unique pattern of behavior that is desired by God. So it's interesting to see the slight modifications to the story. Here's where we get to the crux of the issue. Why indeed did Rabbi Yehuda Levi choose to include the Khazar story at all? To be sure, creating protagonists within a work of philosophy gives more life to the texts, which could otherwise be incredibly boring. As we discussed but the question still remains, why choose this particular story? A nation of pagan warriors turned converts. For one thing, the idea of an angel visiting a human being and suggesting that God is conscious of a particular person's behavior and that he desires something of that individual flies in the face of everything that the Greek philosophers believed. The fact that God actually cares about us, the fact that God visits us and chooses to communicate with us, is contrary to the Greek approach. They believe that God is above all human desires and intentions and that he is above knowing the details of this world. It is vital for Rabbi Yehuda Levi to emphasize the Jewish belief in a providential God, a God who is constantly mindful of the deeds and the thoughts of his creations. At this point, I'd like to bring to your attention the great response to the question of theodicy, of how you reconcile a good God with bad things, a good God with tragedy. If God is good, then how can tragedies take place? This is a question that has thundered throughout the ages. And multiple answers have been provided by various faith groups, even within Judaism, throughout the ages, where essentially one of three values is compromised in order to answer the question. The three values that are important for us to know about God is that God is almighty, that God is good, and that God cares. Almighty, he's good, and he cares. If you remove any one of those three, you've answered the question. For example, in Harold Kushner's book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, he removes the first one. He says, God is not almighty. He's good, and he cares, but he's not in control. So that's why the bad things happen. Other approaches say God is almighty, but he's not good. Or God is almighty, and he's good, but he just doesn't care. If you remove one of those three, you're good to go. What Hasidus does is that you can't move the goalposts. God is almighty, God is all powerful, God is infinite, God is good, God cares. And within those goalposts, you've got to be able to answer the question.
You got to make the field goal.
You got to
kick the field
goal.
goal.
Kick the field goal, right? And actually, that's what we do in Hasidus, and that was the book that I wrote. It's called "If God is Good, Why Can Life Be So Bad?" I think you can still buy the book on Amazon, but that's a deep dive into answering this question. The Greek philosophy is that God is maybe all-powerful, but that he's not engaged. He's disengaged. He doesn't care. That's this Greek philosophy that we're negating right now. He doesn't actually care about us. He doesn't actually visit us. Your choices don't matter, which is why when somebody says, do you think God really cares if I eat the spoon like this or like that? And the answer is absolutely yes. That's foundational to our faith. As Jews, we have this peculiar custom of tradition of not eating the rump, the tuchus steak. How do you say tuchus steak in French?
I don't know.
How do you say?
Rump steak, stick loin.
Yeah, it's got a fancy name, no? It's a more fancy name than rump.
You don't know?
Whatever.
I'll get it.
Yeah, whatever. You got to be able to say it somewhere. So why don't we eat the steak? It's not that the rump steak is not kosher. It is kosher. The rump steak is kosher. It's just that the sciatic nerve inside of the rump is not kosher. You're not allowed to eat the sciatic nerve. Now the sciatic nerve spreads like a spider web down throughout the nether regions of the animal and the human being as well, by the way. Now, what is the significance of us being prohibited from eating the sciatic nerve? Jacob, the story happened. It's one of the earliest commandments in the Torah when Jacob was wrestling with an angel all night long. As Jacob wrestled with an angel, one might think that the angel cared only for the loftiest components of our lives, right? Jacob was about to face off with his nemesis, with Esau, and Jacob was actually, his name was changed from Jacob to Israel at that time by this angel. Why was he called Jacob? Because he was holding onto the heel. Jacob means a heel, a follower. Yisrael means a warrior, a wrestler. So you would think that God only cares about the important parts of our lives, the name and the big challenges, but does God really care about the small details of our lives? It's at that point that the angel whacks him, dislocates his hip, to tell him, and we learn from this that from now on we're not allowed to eat the sciatic nerve to remind us of this moment, because one of the reasons, the way the Rebbe explains it, why the sciatic nerve is prohibited is because it's here to teach us that God cares about the most intricate and minute details of our lives, even such as nerve endings at the edge of our rump steak.
So you cannot eat the chicken thigh?
The chicken thigh? No, the chickens don't have a sciatic nerve. Do the chickens, my animal anatomy is not great. Let me think. Do chickens have... Okay, let me say this. I think that they do have some sort of a sciatic nerve. However, the prohibition does not apply to fowl, but it does apply to mammals, yeah. Yeah, not to fowl. It's a good question. So
Not fair against
and by the way, it's both legs, it's the right and the left, by the way. It's interesting. There's a whole study about this. But the message here is that God cares about every detail of our lives. And that runs contrary to the faith to the approach of the philosopher, which we're going to read a lot about as we make our way through the Kuzari. Also significant to the dream of the king is the issue of behavior in the context of religion. In Rabbi Yehuda Levi's account, the angel's words are, your intentions are desirable to your creator, but not your deeds. These words, I'm in the middle of page 8, Keith. These words go to the very core of Rabbi Levi's understanding of Jewish philosophy. Judaism is more a religion of deed than a religion of creed.
not religion at all.
It's what?
It's not a religion. It's far
Not a
beyond
religion at all. That's an interesting way to put it, which I have said sometimes before, that Judaism is not a religion at all.
Well, religion is an enlightenment concept. It's a separate man of faith, the faith of a man, his worldview, his Weltanschauung, from civic life. It makes it into
A religion
private
wants to separate normal people from the weirdos. Is that what you mean?
No. From the private life, from the civic life.
That's so interesting because Moses Mendelssohn, that was one of his main teachings. Moses Mendelssohn was one of the early Enlightenment writers.
That's
He-
not religion.
He said that you should be a Jew in your home and a mensch when you go outside.
That's what religion
Is that where the term religion came from? That's so interesting. I did not know that. So Judaism is not a religion because it actually infiltrates every component of our lives. Judaism affects the way you tie your shoelaces. Yeah. The Code of Jewish Law tells you you're supposed to tie your shoelaces a certain way. Yeah. It says in the Code of Jewish Law.
Goes on first.
Which shoe goes on first? Which shoe goes off first? Yeah. This is very, very important stuff. We serve God in every aspect of our lives, not only in the spiritual sides of
The
our lives.
aspect of this for people to understand who aren't familiar with this is that a violation of that is not a grave sin. You're trying to get us, you're trying to live the right way, but if we do transgress, it's easily
Correctable.
correctable.
You're not
or
dealing with God who is who is a jealous, sadistic, cruel being, but rather a God who desires that we remain connected and aligned and in flow with Him. And when we sin, we're fragmenting, we're disconnecting ourselves from ourselves.
Well, is that a halakhic? Is that a sin? The point is, it's not only Hashem that is not ruthless. It's the rabbinic. It's the enforcers of the law, the teachers of the law.
Also,
who
no
are-
reason
who
to
ought to
of
be-
course not.
who are merciful and recognize that.
Of course, absolutely. So Judaism is more a religion of deed than creed. Now, for the philosopher, there's certainly very little to do with creed. With deed, I mean. But I'm thinking even, in Judaism, we've been criticized for being so physical of a faith. If you're going to be a faith, then you should meditate. You should do music. But why are you indulging in food? Why are you indulging in the cholent? Why are you drinking wine? For the Muslims, for example, they avoid the wine, right? The Christians, they avoid marriage. But for the Jews, the mitzvah is marriage and to procreate, right? We've been accused of being a very physical, a very mundane religion because for us, the purpose is not to escape this world, but rather to infuse this world with holiness.
Elevate it.
Hypersensuality, which they use against us in their anti-Semitic tropes about the sexuality of Jews and masculine promiscuity and
I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to, though.
You're off on a tangent.
What were you saying? Mordechai?
I wanted to ask, you're saying that God is into all our details.
major
So
trope
does
in
that mean
anti-Semitism.
sometimes when we're stuck in traffic, is that a message from God more than it is, okay, we're stuck in traffic or frustrated? Is God trying to send a message that he's still paying attention?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So Judaism is more religion of deed.
There you go.
What? Judaism is more religion of deed than creed. In other words, what a person does is far more important than what a person believes. And this is a very foundational concept. What? Yeah. Okay, that's an extension of that. That's an extension of that. But people will say to me, like, I can't lay tefillin. I don't believe in God. And I said to him, what's that got to do with anything? What does the fact that you don't believe in God have to do with your not laying tefillin?
Just do it.
In other words, it's like a parent saying, I don't want to feed my child today because I'm not in the mood. And I'm like, what's it got to do with anything? You're not in the mood. Why should your child suffer because you're a shmendrik? Because you need a therapist, therefore your child should go hungry. You go to a therapist, deal with that later, but your child needs to eat, right? In other words, I don't believe in God, therefore I have to violate the Shabbos. Well, what's it going to do with anything? This is your obligation. This is what you have to do. No, you don't have an education. Get an education. You don't believe. Okay, so let's find the rabbi, have a chat. Talk about it. Let's deal with it. But to somehow absolve yourself because you don't believe would be to throw the baby out of the bathwater. It's not an excuse.
No, but the argument you hear all the time is, I don't believe that kosher. I don't believe I have to go Shabbos. I'm a good person. I do good things.
So this, my friend, you know where it comes from?
My deeds are more important than my creed. So that seems to be
deeds. No. Which deeds? Which deeds?
Made up deeds.
Those. That's an invented value
arbitrary
system,
deeds
right?
that are consistent with your reason. That's the problem.
arbitrary. No.
Now, Rob, let me explain.
This is the universal
Rob, let me explain where this comes
I
from.
don't kill anybody.
Rob, I want you to realize.
I help little old ladies across the street.
Rob, I want you to realize that what you're talking about, you're espousing a Hellenic approach to Judaism. This is exactly the problem.
No, what I'm saying is I don't believe.
Now, let me explain my point. Let me finish my point.
Believe deeds trump creed.
They do.
I think Judaism, we believe in creed.
Okay,
No.
so
Follow the rules.
let me just
Something
explain. It's a
that
sense. It's a
good
subtle
idea.
point. It's a subtle point that what you're talking, you're espousing the influence without even realizing, and I think you're very, very well intentioned. This is a Greek Hellenic philosophy, what you're proposing. I'll tell you why.
I'm not proposing it. I'm saying that's the argument you hear from people that say
Okay,
it's deed over creed.
but which
Not
deed?
creed.
The question is which deed. The Greek philosopher says like this. He says that the highest value is reason, and reason will therefore dictate which behaviors are good and which behaviors are bad. The philosopher has no space for faith because God's choice of our actions has no value. It's humanism, right? It's reason above all. I don't need God. I can figure it all out by myself. And if God likes black leather boxes and leather straps, that's got no bearing on my life, right? That's the Greek approach. The Greek approach will tell the Jews of Hanukkah, we like your buildings, we like your books, but keep it intellectual. Don't make it spiritual. Keep God out of it, right? So in other words, the Greek philosopher's approach will be one where he's going to determine good and bad. This is why, it's amazing to see it today. The protests against the death of Arabs in Gaza, okay, worldwide protests.
Mhm.
All those people should be protesting right now. They should be protesting against the murder of
In
Arabs
Iran.
in Iran.
We're not Arabs.
They're not Arabs. What are they? Persians. Right?
Persians.
So the same people, the same college campuses that were going mad, berserk, they still are going mad
Yeah, they're still going.
about free Palestine. What they should be speaking about free Iran. They should be
Yeah.
saying this, right? But the silence is deafening
Logic has nothing to do with it.
because well, it's like this. It's corrupted logic. What it is like it's saying it's humanism. It's saying I determine the facts. They've got nothing to do. It's everything. It's really subjective. At the end of the day, it's subjective, right?
Arbitrary is what I
It's arbitrary, right?
Whatever Qatar paid for.
But only, by the way, they just discovered yesterday that Qatar is not only infiltrated into our college campuses and our journalists in America, but Haaretz newspaper as well. Yes, they've been paying off journalists there for years in Haaretz. Surprise, right? So where I'm going with this, Rob, is something so subtle that you touched on. It's so vital. It's so important for us to realize, why we're fighting, why we talk about Hanukkah to this day. And I keep on repeating this message because Hanukkah is alive. The Greeks are alive and well within our own hearts to the point that they become so entrenched, so embedded, we don't even recognize them as the enemy anymore. The Greek philosopher says, my understanding trumps all. The Greek philosopher says that I do not understand God's actions, therefore God doesn't exist. because my understanding is the highest value, right? A Jew says the other way around. He says, look, I don't understand the Holocaust. I don't understand why God is doing this to me. Now it's time to daven ma'ariv. It's time to pray.
Isn't it creed over deed?
No, that's
I'm
deed.
agreeing
That's
with you.
deed.
I don't agree.
No,
with
no,
you.
that's deed.
It's
That's
deed.
deed. It's surrendering your intelligence.
It's deed tied to greed.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly both, but it's an emphasis on action.
Through action.
Rob, it's an emphasis of action. You're saying, look, I don't understand. I'm not going to do it because I understand it. I'm going to do it despite my lack of understanding. Right? This is when a Jew says that I'm going to give the tzedakah, even though
I'm broke.
even though I'm broke, exactly. Yeah, even though I should be receiving tzedakah, I'm going to give it because it's a mitzvah. And he says, I'm going to go to shul even though I'm angry with God. That's what it means. That's what it means, right? The Greek would never do that. That's why Robin Hood gets complicated. You know, Robin Hood is the one who's stealing from the rich, give it to the poor. How do you determine what good and bad is? Because it's very complicated in today's world. The irony, the irony is everywhere.
Oh, and
When-
it's cultural.
And by the way, the United Nations. Have you heard the United Nations call a meeting yet?
For Iran.
Have they called a meeting for Iran yet?
Yeah.
I mean,
You're still submitting to another authority when you think you're acting independently based on your reason. You're still submitting to the media or to some authority other than yourself.
I think as human beings-
it's still a creed.
Stephen, I think as human beings, we're tied. We're designed to need to plug into a higher power, into something bigger than ourselves. Which is why we need a soccer team. We need a Philadelphia Eagles. Who won? I have no idea.
The 49ers.
Okay, Basel time. So, and the amount of times I heard about this game this weekend is crazy. People need to as if it's going to make a difference to your life. If San Francisco or Philadelphia won the game, right? No, we just need to affiliate with something which is beyond ourselves.
Rob has his Bears
That's
shirt
just
on.
a need for diversion, Rabbi.
He's involved in everything.
Of course, God is
So he's
involved.
involved in the game.
I think it's much more than diversion, Stephen. I think it's much more than diversion. It's got to do with identity. Then we need a Republican Party, we need a Democrat Party, we need a them, and we need an us. We need to know. We need to be able to identify with something bigger, greater than ourselves. So as human beings,
So like a glass of wine?
Creating
You like
polarities.
a glass of wine?
Yeah.
You like a good meal?
Yeah.
Why? Because it gives you pleasure. Why is this any different? Why is the game any different?
He's got a Chicago Bears
You
shirt
can
on.
go to
no,
dinner-
so you're
you went
saying-
to dinner
I
for
got
3
you. I got you.
and
So you're saying the
are
game is a
lusting.
distraction
Not a distraction.
and entertainment.
It's not entertainment.
What is it?
It's something that's here, and just like this table or your meal, we give blessing to it.
Okay.
Same with the game.
So why?
You can't dis-
So why
you
are they
can't- you
crying?
can't
So
find-
why are they crying when they lose?
Why are you upset if you have a lousy glass of wine?
I don't cry after the last
Or-
glass.
or-
of wine.
a lousy meal.
I don't cry over it. Why do people cry when their team loses?
Why
is that National Day of Mourning?
Invested.
Why is that?
Because
Why could you rob a bank in South America during the World Cup final and nobody would even know?
Why does it supersede civic?
Anyways,
The way
we're digressing,
the way
folks.
God put it great
I
in this
think
world,
You're digressing from your digressions.
Yeah, guys, let's go back, guys. I'm way over time. Let's just go back to the philosopher. It's so interesting. It's so important to understand. It's so important and interesting to understand that the foundations of Judaism need to be separated from the corruption of the Greek influence. The Greek influence wants to put reason above all, humanism as the paradigm, whereas Judaism says the human being is a servant of God, is an agent of God, because God is supreme, and it's God's creed which dictates our deed, not our personal intellectual creed, which dictates our deed. And that's the reason that we're saying now is why Rabbi Yehuda Halevi founded his book on this encounter, on the story of the Kuzari, of the angel who revealed himself to the king, to say, yes, your matters do action. Your actions do matter. Judaism is more a religion of deed than creed, middle page 8. In other words, what a person does is far more important than what a person believes. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi stresses this point over and over in several places in the Kuzari, especially when contrasting Judaism with Greek philosophy. The philosopher argues that once you have integrated this philosophy within yourself, you need not concern yourself with which specific dogma, rituals, and other actions and choice of words or language you will follow. That is the approach of the Greek Hellenist philosophy. By contrast, Judaism emphasizes the necessity of a unique pattern of behavior that if one should deviate from it even an iota, it loses its special quality and it's essentially ineffective. This is the unique fascinatingly unique approach of Judaism, which is what we're going to be exploring. This is what keeps it real. Because if you're going to allow wisdom to reign supreme, and I spoke about this on Shabbos, when what happens when you allow wisdom to run amok. King Solomon, he had 1,000 wives, which violated the Torah, right? He said, it won't happen to me because I'm smart enough to know better.
Right.
And they corrupted him. Achitophel was the second wisest man of all. Achitophel was David's advisor, and he says in his deathbed, just before he strangled himself to death, when he realized that what he had done and he had messed up, he said, he spoke about that cryptic directive. He said that when the sky is clear in Shavuos, you should plant wheat. And the Rebbe explains what that means. Wheat is human food, it's brain food. Wheat represents human intellect. And Shavuos is the giving of the Torah. When the sky is clear in Shavuos, when you have clarity of faith, that's when wisdom should follow. But without faith, wisdom is running amok. It's dangerous, and it will bury you. So these are the principles that we're going to be learning as we make our way through the Kuzari. Thank you for joining me today, folks. Have a wonderful day.